Ogaga, welcome to Sahara TV.
Thank you for having me. Maybe I should start by saying that I never thought I would be in the US for as long as I ended up being here. When I came in 2001, it was to finally indulge my heart by doing what I'd always wanted to do, which is do studies in literature and writing. And I felt all the time I was studying law, I was stealing time from writing and literature for law. So it was time now to turn it the other way around, steal time from law and give it to where in my mind it legitimately belonged. So it was just going to be a quick Master of Fine Arts in poetry, but then once I got to Cornell, which is why I did graduate school, I was so intellectually stimulated that I said, well, I might as well be hung for a goat as for a lamb, you know. And so I applied just only to Cornell, and surprisingly they took me. So I did a PhD, which is, you know, is a long haul, 5 years, and so altogether 7 years. So well, I'm not going to just go back home after all of this. I would stay around, teach for a little while before I go back. But I found out in the last 2 years, every time I was going to school, I was asking myself, what am I doing here? What am I doing here? It dawned on me that I felt the call of home too strongly to remain here, principally because things, as you know, are really in a bad shape in our country, and I think we need all hands, all good hands, if you permit me to call mine as good, all good hands, proverbially on deck, to clean the Aegean stables of Nigeria. And that's the reason why I decided it's time to go home. If I remain here in the US, I don't think there's much I can do politically. No matter how prominent I become, even if I reach the peak of the ladder, you know, in academia, become a full professor, I will still only be useful within my classroom. That will not have an immediate impact in Nigeria, in changing things in Nigeria, but I will remain in the margins here. Back home in Nigeria, I am a first-class citizen. When I speak, I will be heard, and I can more directly, you know, be involved in trying to bring about the change we all have been pining for. Well, it's government, you know, but I feel that that is more, how shall I put it, that will satisfy me more in the sense that I would have been elected by the people. So I'll be going to be a representative of the people. And that way, I can also be held accountable to a certain minimum program. I would have told them what I intend to do when I get to the house. And that will be a measure of determining whether I have been true to my promises, whether I have done anything at all to impact the lives of the people more directly. Take, for instance, the whole area of constituency projects. At first, when I was thinking about this, and I was very dubious about whether a legislator in Nigeria can be of any use to the people. It was my good friend, Senator Femi Ojudu. We happen to share the same, at the same time at 15A Awolowo Road. So, and I've known him a long time, right from his days at Concord newspaper, before they founded the News. And he said, look, first of all, there are too few there who can be trusted to speak on behalf of the people and be expected to do anything that will really directly impact the people. So we need more and more people who are interested in democracy, who know what democracy is, who know what representative government is. We need as many people as possible. And two, that it's not that through constituency projects you can actually do things that will inspire the people, make them realize that it is not everybody who goes to government that goes there to feather his own nest or her own nest, that you can carry out projects that directly impact them. And I expect to make that, you know, a priority thing for me, agenda for me, for myself, so that we can begin to break down the walls of cynicism Because in general, the average person thinks that anybody who goes to government goes to feather his or her own nest. But if you then go and serve the people rather than serve yourself, then that can begin to break down the walls of cynicism and make them feel that yes, government is for them and they can participate in it. Well, if I'm to speak the absolute truth, I would say none of the parties are close to my ideological position. But at the same time, you know that party politics always tend to the middle. So if you going to establish a revolutionary government, it's a different thing. But if you're going to go through electoral politics, they are going to have to go through the whole gamut of ideological beliefs and persuasions, from the far left to the far right, and the religious and the non-religious and so on, so that in the end it tends towards the middle. And I feel that the All Progressives Congress, which is where I've decided to pitch my tent, is closer to the kind of politics that social democratic kind of government that the Old West and Midwest were known for. Implement social welfare programs, be interested in developing infrastructure, high priority on education. And then you can look at all the governors of the APC, and look at the things they've done in their state. And that becomes a kind of indication of what they can be expected to do at the national level. Take, for instance, even Ekiti State, where Dr. Kayode Fayemi has infamously lost re-election, not because he was not a performing governor. In fact, the consensus is that he did a brilliant job, there, but that he did not play politics the old way, which is, and that election has become famous for one phrase: stomach infrastructure, because he did not play the politics of stomach infrastructure, which simply means distributing largesse, to the people, awarding contracts that were not meant to be performed, or either to be performed half-heartedly, performed, but all towards patronage, giving money to the party chieftains and those who hang around, the politicians. So if you take a look at the parties and the governors and the states where they are in power and see what they are doing, it can be a very good indication of what the APC as opposed to the PDP will do. But lastly, the PDP has been in power since 1999, since the end of military dictatorship, at least the last round of military dictatorship. And we cannot honestly say that Nigeria is better off today than it was 15 years ago. And it's time for a change. A democracy, a representative government will make no meaning if one party is in power for decades upon decades, because a one-party state. So we do need a breath of fresh air. We do need a change. And that's why the slogan of the APC is change. Well, you quote years earlier, they also said in Little Gidding, I think, one of the 4 quartet poems, all shall be well, all manner of things shall be well, in the perfection of the intention, So the thing is to strive towards perfecting the intention. Human affairs will always be messy. That is a given, whether in a revolution, even of the left, or any revolution at all. Human affairs will always be messy. I'm always struck by the fact that after Moses had led the Israelites out of Egypt, and they were in the wilderness now, and God is providing them manna, feeding them. But the slightest inconvenience, they will say, were there no graves in Egypt that you have brought us here to die in the wilderness? The slightest obstacle, they are again thinking that Egypt was better than now in the wilderness, even though God is giving a manna from heaven. So it's very hard, human affairs. But the thing is the intention to never lose sight of what it is that we reduce the burden of the people, will put a little smile on the child, make sure the child, the school that is attending today is better than the one that attended yesterday, last year. That is the thing. If we remain focused on doing good, serving the people, and don't get swerved from the intention by all kind of petty politics of wanting to serve yourself, then I think in the end, you are bound to leave office better than when you went into office. I don't know if the collection of people who will do that kind of thing are more to be found in the ruling party than the opposition party. But one thing you can say for sure is that they've had a chance. They have had 15 years to do this, and I don't think they've done a very good job of it. So it's time to have a change. It doesn't even arise that I will go there to do the whole politics. I have not been there. I'm entering politics now, partisan politics, so to speak. We're all politicians. Even nowadays in the student movement, in NAS, it was all politics. Campaign for democracy, it was all politics. We had a position, we're campaigning for it. We wanted that to become the ruling idea of the time, the governing idea of the time. Politics is no more than that. The difference between us and those who call themselves professional politicians, the ones who have done party politics right from the beginning, is that they tend to be more self-serving than, say, the activists who are driven only by the principle of common good. So, because I am coming from a background of activism as a student and as a human rights activist, there's already a long list, there's already a record against which I'll be judged. I cannot just come up now and even be heard to advocate the old politics, the so-called politics of stomach infrastructure. No, which is simply go there, feather your nest, and then distribute a few peanuts, to those who are around you, and then they return you. So it's the new politics. It's the politics of change. It's the politics of serving the people rather than serving yourself. That's what I'm coming in for. And I've been asked this question in different ways. For instance, I had an interview with Vanguard newspaper, and they asked me, why do you want to descend from the Olympian heights of academia and human rights to swim in the murky waters of politics? And I had to start by saying, no, you got it wrong. The Olympian height is actually politics, because that's where everything happens. If you take the Hannah Arendt, definition of politics, which is the space of persuasion, then you know that is where we all should be. That is where everybody should be, rather than to leave that space of persuasion to those who do not even intend to persuade you, to start with. I mean, you can't altogether rule out a bit of that, but the reason why they will accept a cup of raw rice or half a bag of raw rice in place of to vote only because they've been given half a bag of raw rice is one thing: poverty. The poverty, it almost as if there's a deliberate policy of impoverishing the people, impoverishing them, so that they can be easily bought by the smallest, how shall I put it, gifts, little sum of money, and any, what would you call them in Nigeria, keker marua, It is really silly, but just imagine that the people did not lack so much. Imagine that the employment level was not as bad as it is. Imagine that the minimum wage is not 18,000 naira. That's when it can even be paid, which cannot even take care of a family of 4 for 3 days, let alone a week or a month. Imagine that, where the people are not as poor as they are. Would they be that ready to sell their vote for cups of rice? They wouldn't. Or for a length of cloth, or for an umbrella. They wouldn't. These things assume a greater significance in their eyes because of the state of poverty they are in. And that's one thing we'll be talking about. Even the day I declared my intention to run for office in my local government headquarters, I emphasized that point. There was even a question and answer session, and it's even on YouTube, where they asked me, they were turning around on me now. Now you're saying we should support you. The other day, one retired general came to us and said, he is a retired general, chest out, he cannot be intimidated, that we should stand by him, and they stood by him. Before they knew it, had gone behind their back and collected some money and stepped down. If we stand behind you, won't you go behind us, be settled, the language you use now, be settled and then turn your back on us? So they were not the ones who were turning back on me, that I might take money and, betray them. So in a way, the people themselves are aware. They are aware. And all we need to do is to continue the work of conscientization, make sure that they remain vigilant. And we actually tell them, if they bring money to you, take it. Because one, it is your money. It is not their money. This is money they got when they got to office. Two, after taking the money, go, meet whatever immediate need you can meet with that, if it is up to it. But on the day you are voting, on the day you go to the polling booth, vote your conscience. Vote for the person you know will serve you rather than himself. And always remember that when they bring you money, they are going to give money to many other people, and it all adds up to a substantial amount. So when they get to office, you can bet on it that the first priority for them will be to recoup that money they had spent, the amount of money they have spent. So this is why you will be forever locked in this infernal cycle of never having the public space developed, never having infrastructure developed, never having job-producing opportunities, be the priority of those in government, but simply just stealing money, looting money to replenish what they have given you before election day. So we are carrying on that conscientization and a social education, projects too. I can't speak for everybody. I just know I can speak for myself. But in my own case, because I'm not just an activist, I'm also a writer. So my views are very much in the public domain. What I stand for right from when I was a student is very much in the public domain. I count that as one very serious check on me, because we all need to be reminded. We always need to be reminded of what the first principles are and what the primary task is. I don't forget it for a moment, but I said jovially, that part of the interview didn't come out, maybe for space reasons. I said, lastly, one of the reasons why I'm actually doing this is that I want to use myself as a guinea pig. I want to see what this spell, this magic spell, that once you were elected to office or you are appointed to a political office and you cross the door into your office, then some kind of magic spell automatically lobotomizes you. You lose your brain, you lose your sense, you lose every reason, and you become a bumbling idiot who can think of, the only thing he can think of, he or she can think of, is how to steal. How much to steal today? When they're going to work in the morning, maybe the only mantra they repeat to themselves, how much can I steal today? How much can I steal today? I want to see that's going to happen to me. Because I don't know why it's invariably the case that when they get to office, people who we used to know, whose positions, they used to be on the side of the people. But once they get to office, somehow they become totally transformed. I want to see what that magic is. I don't believe it will happen to me.
Yeah, I like it.
And I can take Edo State. Take Edo State, where Oshomole, is the governor. You can see the difference. I don't know when last you were in Edo State. But if you've been in Benin City recently, you can see it's worlds apart from where it was under the last governor. And that's because he's committed to expending public funds on meeting public needs, on doing as much public good as possible. That's under a federal system that is so warped that the center is like one monster just gobbling up all the resources of the country. But imagine what a governor like that could do, or a Fashola, or a Fayemi, or even, though he was in the PDP before, now he's in the APC, or Rotimi Amechi, because I've seen the schools that is done in River State. Imagine what they could do if they are committed to serving the people. Well, with all due respect to my good friend, Dr. Ruben Abati, I don't think we have exactly the same pedigree, I'm sure he himself will admit that, I think I come from a deeper, much stronger tradition of being on the side of the people and actually fighting for it, not just merely writing about it, but fighting for it, being in the trenches, with a few, bruises also to show for that. So I'm reminded by those war wounds, of where I'm coming from and why I should not deviate from it. But that is also a good step to always remind me, if at all I stray from what I've been known for, I think it's a good step to remind me by publishing my old articles. I will still be writing, by the way, my old articles. Now, people change, and I mean change is a constant. It's one thing to be an activist. It's another thing to be in government, trying to make laws and trying to implement things, do things. You have to deal with a whole number of constraints. When you're an activist, you just speak strictly for the principle. But when you are in government, when you are a legislator, you have to take in all the views, including the views of those who were never in. It's a self-selected group when you're an activist. You are in the Campaign for Democracy, Civil Liberties Organization, Women in Nigeria, National Association of Nigerian Students. It's a self-selected group. But when you're in office, you are in office for everybody. And where all the views and contending interests meet, it can be very difficult to come to that position that will satisfy either the far right or the far left or the middle. So you just hope that what you're doing is best. What I will be true to is finding that which is in the public good, which is in the interest of the people. If I can find that position, I will always be for it. If I am found not to be for it, if at any point in time I, maybe for lack of clarity, momentary confusion, and it's pointed out to me, I'll be more than glad to come back to the right position. I have not researched it, but the handicaps will have to be, first of all, because when you are in a legislative house, it's a game of numbers. Do you have as many people of like minds as you? Or if not in the majority, at least of enough critical mass to impact the direction of legislation? If you don't, what must be done? So it might be a question of not being committed to maybe lobbying and canvassing for certain positions, or they just don't have enough numbers. I can only speak of one person I know for now, which is the National Assembly. I mentioned his name earlier, Senator Femi Ojudu. Now, while he may not be able to effect legislation in the areas that he wants, one thing he's done very well is to use his office as a bully pulpit, to speak out loudly, clearly about what he thinks ought to be done on any particular issue. I know he spoke out loudly when the question of child marriage, came up. He spoke out loudly, and he's been speaking out loudly on a number of issues. So, with constituency projects and using the powerful megaphone that the office gives you, in addition to any legislation that you might be able to influence, introduce and pass into law, or support and pass into law, I think that usually will be enough if you stay true. If you stay true, if you don't just see the office as an opportunity to feather your nest, to just enjoy the trappings of office without rendering service. That will usually be enough. Because let's face it, the place where the most good can be done is only at the executive level, where there's a budget, the president is there, is directing policy, has a cabinet of ministers who are going to do everything he wants in every sector. But at the house, you just want to make sure that obnoxious laws will not be passed, and new laws that we advance, the public good, will be passed. I have a 7-point agenda, ranging from things like law reform, because there are so many obsolete laws, in our books that need to be got rid of. And then we need to make new laws to take out the fact that we're in the 21st century, in the digital, age. All of that are things that I would like to pay attention to in addition to the oversight duties of the National Assembly, corruption, which is eating us alive, making sure we strengthen, the EFCC, the Independent Corrupt Practices Commission, and all the agencies, police, for instance, so that they are better in a position, to check corruption. And I could reel off many more of these I'm interested in. Now, these are not things that you have executive powers to implement immediately, but things that you hope you can find enough people in the National Assembly, in the civil society, interested in them, so that you can, work on them. One thing I will also do, because I come from civil society, is to work closely with civil society. So if I cannot get support in the House of Reps or in the National Assembly, to turn to my constituency, my natural constituency, which is civil society, to see if we can exert public pressure to bear on any issue that is dear to my heart. Oh yes, I'm all for reforming government and drastically reducing the cost of government. The government is too big in Nigeria, and it's a big drain on resources that are not even enough to begin with. So I'm all for that. Personally, I don't see why legislators earn as much as they do now. You don't need that amount of money to live a reasonably comfortable life, But so any movement on within government or even outside, it's going to be more outside, of course. I'll be part of it. Whether it's going to take part-time legislature or a unicameral legislature, I don't know. What I know is that whatever the unanimous decision is on the best way to reduce the mammoth cost of government in Nigeria comes out, I will support it. I'm all for it. Now, that might make me unpopular, for instance, among my fellow legislators. But I think it will only be those legislators who are not concerned about how they are perceived and about the fact that it's an inordinately large amount of resources they are appropriating into themselves. And I think it's quite frankly scandalous to have such a huge discrepancy between the lowest paid in the public service and the highest paid in the public service. So I'm all for it. Now, the exact ways in which we can get it done, I don't know. It will require us talking about it more seriously, because so far it's just the outcry, that legislators' pay is too big, right? But how precisely can we reduce that cost? And mind is always legislature, the ministers and their retinue of special assistants and all kinds of allowances, security votes for governors and local government chairpersons, and so on. In fact, we need to drastically reduce the cost of government. So we'll go back to the reports. I know that there's a report, is it your Ronsai? Several reports out there on how to reduce the cost of government. Probably one was Danjuma's, I think. We'll go back to the reports. I always study those reports and see what the best way is to reduce the cost of government. What are you going to do with money? There will only be things to do with money. Even if it means paying some indigent students, school fees, helping some hapless woman, give birth, and well, there are always, there are always things to do with money. I think the thing is, if we don't tackle the problem at the roots, then it will become individual acts of posturing, individual acts of, how shall I put it, it won't deal with the problem. For instance, if I'm paid the same salary, assuming I become a legislator and I'm paid the same salary that every other legislator is paid, and I reject mine, or I determine for myself what I think is the proper amount that I need, how do I come to that? It will not stop others collecting theirs. So we need to tackle it at the source and say, no legislator, for instance, should earn more than so amount. And that amount will have been judiciously arrived at, taking into consideration cost of living, inflation rates, whatever it is, whatever legitimate functions that office should perform. Once we've taken those into consideration, and we have the proper amount has been fixed, then everybody, we get that. It will no longer be left to an individual to either reject or determine what his or her proper amount of salary would be, because I could come with a figure which I think is the proper salary, less than the amount being paid, all right, but still far above, what I should get. So what would be the objective way of arriving at that right now salary for a legislator? I think that's where we should focus our energy. Otherwise, individual acts of rejecting parts of it or not, we're not tackle the problem. First of all, when a government has been in power or a party has been in power for more than a decade, now going to 15 years, this is the 14th year. No, 15 years actually, 1999 to 2014, so it's 15 years. And we've moved from, first of all, some states in the north declaring Sharia law, and they were treated with kid gloves. Naturally, something more will happen, something more repugnant will happen, and that's what has happened now. If that matter had been tackled decisively, maybe we will not be where we are now. But now that we are here, what is the government doing? There was embarrassment not long ago of the Nigerian government asking the US government for night goggle visions, for equipment that has been, actually it's no longer in use from excess materials from the Iraq war. The president did not even go to visit in Chibok, before Chibok, when a school was burned down and about 50-something students, were kidnapped. The president did not visit. Then Chibok happened. Then he said he was going to visit. Then all of a sudden he said, oh, security reasons, he will not visit. But if the commander-in-chief cannot visit when we have all the security he needs around him, the Secret Service will have combed everywhere, the SSS, the army, everybody. This is the commander-in-chief. He will come in a retinue and there will be a cordon around him. He cannot visit to go and comfort those whose parents, the parents whose children have been kidnapped. Then how can he expect the foot soldiers, the privates in the army, the ones who don't even have night vision goggles, to go and fight with the insurgents? This is one way in which leadership, has been letting us down in Nigeria. So when the opposition says that the government in power does not deserve to be returned, that it's inept, this is one clear instance. Now, if you leave all that aside, the question of corruption. Before now, we used to hear, even if we call it just noise, just speech making, about zero tolerance for corruption. But when last did you hear anything about zero tolerance of corruption? Right from the moment the president declared that he did not give a damn about not declaring his assets publicly, the corruption, any pretense at an anti-corruption war, died. They could not be heard, to say anything anymore. Then there was a case of the former Minister of Aviation and the whole bulletproof BMW, scandal, and it was literally like pulling teeth to get the government to even tell the minister, to step aside while investigations are being carried on. So everywhere you look, everywhere, even in infrastructure, electricity, power, is it even waste management? Everywhere you look, you see signs of ineptitude. Maybe they mean well, but intentions are not enough. So I think the opposition is right to say that the government does not deserve to be returned, and that there should be a change in the party and the leadership. If you have any examples of where the government has done well, some people cite agriculture, maybe in recent times. I'm not going to say there's one government that is totally bad in every material particular. Maybe in agriculture, maybe we can take that. But I know that we're still importing massive amounts, of food. Everywhere I go now, I see imported apples, grapes, fruits everywhere. It's money we're paying money to import these things. But what are we doing to develop our own local fruit industry? And what are we also doing to export some of that fruit industry somewhere else so that we earn money, for it? I don't know. But all I'm saying is that we are not better off in 2014 than we were in 1999 in any significant way. In any significant way. In civil liberties, in terms of civil liberties, yes, we're better off because people are not just being clamped in jail for no reason, and there will be a decree too to prevent habeas corpus so that they cannot be released. But other than the area of civil liberties, in terms of our welfare, in terms of where Nigeria is going, in terms of infrastructure, employment, development, I don't see that we're significantly better off than we were. Ethno-religious politics of Nigeria must always be a big factor, you know, and it will be a big factor anywhere. The politics might change, but the ethno-religious factors will always be important. Although the APC, I think the APC, many people forget that it's a new party. It's a merger of several other parties. So, but the APC itself is a new party. So the first thing he needed to do was to get his substantive leadership, not the interim leadership, and that they have done with the convention. But after the convention now is to go to the primaries. Now, unlike the party that is in power, that has a sitting president who naturally is going to be running unless he changes his mind in the last minute, which I think is not going to happen. They don't have to go to primaries before they have their candidate, but the opposition party has to do primaries, and the opposition party is new, and it's only now setting in place its administrative machinery. So, because the ruling party has defined, and they had the privilege of doing that, defined the being opposition party as a certain kind of party, many people tend to take it that way. But how do you know that when they have not even brought out their own candidates? So we have to wait till the APC brings its own candidates after the primaries before we will know what kind of party, what kind of candidates they are going to present. But I seriously think that it will be in the interest of the party to take into consideration the sentiments that prevail in the country. Any serious party will do that anyway, take into consideration the sentiments, the prevailing sentiment in arriving at this.
As a member of that party.
But just a moment. I know that the propaganda has been that the APC is a Muslim party, it's an Islamic party. And the proof of that is that it is seriously contemplating fielding a Muslim ticket. Now, the last time we spoke about a free and fair election, in fact, the freest and fairest election in Nigeria, the two candidates were Muslim. Abiola, a Muslim, and Kingibe, a Muslim. Rather than bring Nigeria down, what he did was to potentially unite us around one thing, which became a powerful symbol for resisting the military and preventing them from perpetuating military dictatorship for longer than they wanted. So the propaganda is one thing. What the people really care about is another. As far as I'm concerned, Christian, Muslim, Muslim enemies, Christian enemies, whatever combination of comes out for a presidential ticket, what matters to me is whether they are credible Nigerians. They are credible Nigerians. They have a track record of performance. We can trust them to serve the people and not themselves. And if we can, then it matters little, what their religious persuasions are. Because in any case, we should be doing everything now to reduce the harmful, totally destructive role that religion plays in our political life. Religion is a private matter, and Nigeria is a secular state. I think we should go with that, and we should, if anything at all, that's what we should be harping upon right now. Nigeria is a secular state. Religion is a private, belief is a private thing. What we care about is people who are credible, who will serve the people rather than serve themselves, and it doesn't matter, in the end. Because the office I'm running for is House of Reps. I'm not running for president. If I were, then I would say I am the one. I am the one.
All right.
But until the party brings out its candidates, I can't begin to.
All right.
With them.
Thank you so much, Ogaga, for coming in, and we wish you luck in your campaign. And we hope to see you in the House of Reps.
Thank you very much. Always a pleasure being here.